Welcome to Autogefühl, your #1 resource for in-depth car reviews. This is Thomas for you today with the all-new Audi Q7. The second generation, the first one has been running from 2006 till 2015 and has been sold quite over 500,000 times. And you know, Autogefühl is the channel where you find all the positive and all the negative aspects about every car. And today we're going to find out which ones prevail with the Audi Q7. So we're starting today with the side profile because it's the best angle to talk about the chassis and the length of the car. Actually, the second generation here now is 5.05 meters long, and that's 3 centimeters shorter than the predecessor. And just from the visual perspective, the car looks even smaller, in my opinion. Or what's your comment on that? I think due to the new design, the car looks rather like the Q5, like the smaller brother. That really came quite close, I think. So the major change here in the second generation of the Audi Q7 is the weight. They've saved a lot of weight, actually at about 325 kilograms with the basic entry version in comparison to the predecessor car. A lot of this has been saved at the chassis, about 71 kilograms, because the chassis is now from 41% of aluminum. And there has been also some more weight savings, for example, with the suspension and other parts, so you get to this total amount. So all new is this so-called hexagonal front grille. You see this new Audi shape, and it has been a lot in the criticism lately, actually. Some of you said from the preview we've shown you that you don't like the exterior, so I want to hear your comments now, what you think now with the live car, if your opinion has changed or you still think it's rather ugly from the outside. What is clear that the front grille is very strong and quite huge. You got the Quattro logo here as well in there. Of course, it's from serial production in this case. This is the basic overview to the strong front. You also see there's kind of a middle power dome here. See these design lines here, 1 and 2. But the rather design is kind of conservative, you know, because it's nothing very spectacular, nothing very special. And I think they just want to keep it quite simple, and often customers really want the conservative design, but I also want to hear your opinion about that. And there's also a new light signature you see in the front as well as in the back. See, it's horizontal here and then flows to the vertical line on the upside and on the lower part. And the headlights are actually available in xenon, starting with the basic version. Then you got full LED lights and these full LED matrix light as a last option, and these were especially for the high beam, that you can leave out certain spots from the high beam. But they really cost a lot of extra money. So, short alloy check. These ones here are the 20-inch alloys. They are optional, have this sporty design. From serial equipment it comes with 18-inch and then 19, 20 and maximum is 21-inch for the alloys. And actually you can not only turn the front wheels. The new system now that has been transported over from Porsche 911 Turbo S is now available for the Audi Q7. It's the rear wheel steering. And there you can also turn the rear wheels 5 degrees to each side at maximum. So at slow speeds the turning circle is narrower, and at higher speeds the rear wheels take the same direction to make this car stabler. And finally, a huge change also happened in the rear here. You know, the Q7 so far had this wave headlights and it looked rather bulky. I think the car looks a little bit even more conservative now, yes, not that kind of unique as the first generation, but I think it has been a design improvement. However, still it's not my favorite here from the rear. We already got the S-line exterior package here today, by the way, and this, for example, also makes this comp structure here, but it's just black plastic here, also not the highest quality in my opinion. You see all of the lights, they are drawn back horizontally, and I think maybe it's not the best solution because that makes the car even broader from the rear. And so it's, well, rather looking like a tank from the rear, or what do you think? One design problem, and I also think an off-road problem, is this overhang here in the rear. The wheelbase is 2.99 meters, by the way, but that's not the problem. I think it's really this rear part here, because you see there's hardly any ground clearance, and that can be a problem when going off-road or even maybe going up a pavement or something like that. So you need the optional air suspension then, because then you can not only lower down the car 3 centimeters for very fast driving, you can then also top it up 6 centimeters in height, and then it's actually no problem to go off-road then. But with a standard suspension, without the air suspension, if you keep it at that level, that might cause you some problems if you're not sticking to plain roads. Let's look what's beneath the hood. Very easy opening, hydraulic dampers check, everything all right. There's just a huge covering here for this V6 engine, the turbo petrol engine, 333 horsepower, 6.1 seconds from 0 to 100 kilometers. We're going to test this one here today, and I've already tested the diesel as well, so I can later on tell you what's the difference. Because on the diesel side, there's actually now also 6-cylinder with 272 horsepower. And later on there will also be some weaker engines, a 218 horsepower diesel. This style here in the interior now is rock grey. And we got aluminum strips here on the dashboard. It's a completely new cockpit. Everything looks really clean, even cleaner than any other Audi cockpit. And you see the vents, if we all move them into the same place, we got a horizontal line going from left all the way to the right, and everything is processed so well. I also love the aluminum pad here on the middle console, very huge middle console here as well. There's so many combinations available actually. You can pick bright and dark wood, you can also pick wood here, and in this case we got the artificial, it's plastic dashboard here. It's quite of soft, so it's not that hard, and I think it does the job. There's also leather available here for that, but I wouldn't go for that because there's actually no reason. It looks fine as it is right now. The new steering wheel here is kind of slim, very slim for such a big full-size SUV, and that helps also controlling the whole car. It's also quite a light steering. It's actually very well to control, especially when you're driving quite slowly. That's already remarkable here. So I think I didn't like the exterior so much, but the interior is really high class and so well done. Everything also has a kind of great overview. We're also going to in the details soon, but just the basic impressions here is an interior where you sit down and say, wow. So many interesting details here in the interior. This is the automatic gearbox shifting lever. You can put your hand on here, also just leave it at the rest, press the left side and then go down for the D or up for the rear drive. I think it's also design-wise a very good solution. It also works quite fast. And then up here, there's this new touchpad where you can actually control the menu or go back or switch the tabs, and you get a feedback actually. You maybe also hear it clicking. It's not that it really goes deep in, but you get a feedback here also when clicking on that. And this one here is this very classical Audi MMI. You see here again the very nice clicking sound. They are really working on that in their laboratories for sound, and the shortcuts here for the GPS, telephone, radio and media. And everything can be seen at the upper screen then. And speaking about the details, we here got the virtual cockpit optional. You know, in the Audi TT, it is just from the serial equipment. Here you can choose if you want the classic analog instruments or these digital ones where you can then have the GPS in the middle. Here also available with a satellite view. So I think it's good that it's actually optional, because maybe, what do you think? Would you go for this digital cockpit? Of course, it's always an option and you have to pay over, I think it's about 2,500 euros in combination with the GPS for it, and you really have to think about that then. So everything we see here looks really great, high-class interior, but you have to be careful. Actually, the car starts about 61,000 euros in Germany, then with the diesel, but also the petrol engine doesn't make the biggest difference then. What makes a difference is the interior equipment or the trim levels, and then you can easily top up the car to about 90,000 euros or something like that. Here we got a lot of extra equipment, but what is from serial production, and I really love that, is the emergency brake for the city. And it is not only realizing cars in front of you and then autonomously is braking when you're not paying attention, also pedestrians are recognized. And that's a really good thing that they have included now, because in some other cars it's not included in the serial equipment, and that doesn't really help then. Every car should have it from a serial equipment, and this one is included here then. Also the basic parking aid is included in the serial production equipment. Then if you want to have the rear view camera, for example, this one is optionally again. Talking about serial and optional, same accounts for the seats. There are a variety of optional seats available. This one here is the full leather equipment. And you know I have a strong opinion about that, because this is not only leather, this is ripped off skin of a dead animal. And so I would always go for the fabric seats. The fabric seats are actually from serial production here in the lowest version, so you can easily go with them and also save a lot of money. And then you also don't need the optionally vented seats, because here on these leather seats you tend to sweat a lot, especially in summer times. If you just go for the fabric seats, you don't, and they also look great, I can promise you. Below this one here, the armrest, there's a special feature also, again optionally. Here we see a symbol with a smartphone. Actually, you can put your smartphone in here, and the first feature is then also the car antenna is used for better call quality. And this is also the spot for the new inductive loading or inductive charging of your smartphone. It's, for example, possible with the Nokia or with the newer Samsung smartphones. And for an iPhone, for all the Apple devices, you need a special adapter with a cover, with a special cover that supports this inductive charging. Then you plug it in this cover, and then you can also charge your Apple devices in here. And one of my favorites here is the ceiling. See, it's covered in the Alcantara style here. Feels so great, but you feel like you have to comp it, that it looks straight. I think it's also very well designed here in this dark color, but it's even better when it's in this bright beige color, and the whole car looks even lighter, because we have this round here from the inside. It looks so spacious even. There's also a panoramic roof available, but this one of course offers even more headspace. Let's switch to the rear compartment, because space-wise this is actually the compartment where the biggest changes are to be found, because you have more space here now in the rear compartment, and you're also way more flexible. For example, the rear seats here, 1, 2, 3, so they are split, it's not a complete bench. They can be moved 11 centimeters in the front or in the back. So in this kind of setup I would have more trunk here now. And what is also important, optionally you can also pick the 7-seater option, and then you have 2 more seats here behind that one. And then, for example, you can leave the seats here, let's say, quite in the front, and still, as an adult, 1.86 meters, I would still have enough knee space here. Even if I would be the tall driver, then still someone could sit behind me at the 6th and the 7th seat. So you're really flexible by that, and just can control, for example, the middle seat here as well, to the front and the back, and the third one here, of course, as well. If you're just traveling here in the second row, or if you don't have the 7-seat option, you of course would be all the way back then you see you have really a lot of space here in front of my knees. Really comfortable upright position here also in the rear compartment. And especially if we don't have the panoramic roof, there's really a lot of headspace. But even if you pick the optional roof, then with a great view out to the outside, it would still work here for the rear passenger. And that's actually this one, the reason why you should pick this car here, because if you don't use the space here in the rear and in the trunk, you could easily just go for a Q5. That's a rather practical solution then, and it also feels more agile, the car then. So I think this is the reason here to go for the Q7 if you really need the space here also behind. This car here is not only equipped with the normal air conditioning, it has the 4-zone air conditioning. 2 zones in the front, and also both rear passengers can individually pick their temperature and even the seat heating. So real luxury feature here also for the rear compartment, but again optionally of course. Then let's take a look at the trunk of the Q7. And the trunk is going quite steep in, but it's actually not that high, you see. This space here is kind of limited, but the loading still is good here, very low, very practical is loading in. And actually what is possible as well, when you have the option, the air suspension, you can even lower the car further if you've got a lot of heavy things to put in here. And because the trunk is going so steep in, it also makes sense to have some practical solutions to split the trunk. Actually, for example, here now I got the suitcases in between here, so they're really secure. And you can, of course, at any time remove this stuff. For example, this one here, and you can just remove it here. And then you have a free space here. And you can also adjust the length of this aluminum strip here. Then I'll show you how we can reach the maximum capacity of the luggage compartment of 2075 liters. First of all, I turn the lever here, and then you see we got an even loading area. And then furthermore, it's also possible to flip this seat up. And actually here in this case, it doesn't make so much sense. It makes more sense if you have the 6- and 7-seater option, because this is then the perfect entry for the rear seats. Let's get to driving now. First of all, I show you the key. You always want to see the key. This is a newly designed key. I think it's very beautiful, and it's also slim, that you can actually fit it between the cup holders, and also it's not that bulky in your pocket. Let's start the engine. This one here, as I said, is the V6, the petrol engine, 3 liter, 333 horsepower then. What is the best about the petrol engine? Of course, it feels rather light and agile. About the sound, well, you don't hear so much from it because the sound insulation is actually that good that it's almost kind of creepy, because you hear really nothing. You hear just nothing. You can talk with your neighbor here on the another seat when you're going like 150, 160 kilometers an hour, and you still hear nothing from the outside. And also the sound is just so awesome. Optionally, there's a speaker system available with up to 23 speakers, and I've tested this. It's really like a concert. You're getting goosebumps all over the place. That's really astonishing. We're just in the normal driving mode here, and what we do feel is that the weight has been reduced with the car, so it doesn't feel like such a heavy car here in the corners. Really sharp corners here in the Swiss Alps. See, the steering is quite direct. You also don't need too long steering ways. Of course, it's not like in a sports car, but the steering wheel already feels a little bit like in the sports car. And we can, for example, also pick another drive mode. For example, we can put the Audi Drive Select to the dynamic mode. And then the RPMs go higher, the shifting goes later, and usually the car is like 1 gear down. And then I can really hammer the throttle. And we got a very good acceleration. You need some, like a second that the turbo is setting in, because the car is still quite heavy, but then it's really powerful. And I mean, about 6 seconds for such a heavy car, that's quite impressive. I'm really amazed by the handling here. If we go right and left here now, that's not a huge SUV as it feels. It feels way more agile, so they have done a very good job here. The suspension, I got the air suspension here, it's just so flawless. I'm really flying on the road, so comfortable. And still, it's getting a little bit stiffer if you're going fast in corners. So this really helps you also for the sporty driving. I think this is also a difference to the all-new Volvo XC90, just from the technological side here, from suspension and driving. It's really superior here, the Q7, to the Volvo XC90. However, I must say, the seats in the XC90 are way better. These ones are the differences here also by driving and the comparison, and I think it's just really superb from driving here. I'm not sure if you can make such a huge SUV any better from the driving. Maybe at some time, but soon I think this is one of the best here so far as for driving. Let me conclude about the all-new Audi Q7, the second generation. And you also told me, Thomas, please compare it to the all-new Volvo XC90 because you've also driven that. So starting with the Q7, on the exterior, I think it's still not my design favorite. I think it's more beautiful than the predecessor, yes, but I think there are more beautiful cars here in the full-size XUSV segment. As for the interior, I think it's just pure perfection there. It looks really high class, it is high class. All the sound from knobs and buttons and everything is clear. The aluminum style, especially here in this S-line car, it's just really pure perfection. And also the technological features, it's really superb. However, some people might argue that it's a little bit overdone, maybe too much features, and because you're losing the overview then. The driving is way more agile than the previous version, so they have really done a very good job here. Especially the air suspension here is just so flawless. You're really riding a carpet. It's so comfortable, but also kind of sporty at the same time. Of course, it's not the most fun when you're going in tight corners with such a still heavy car, but for such a heavy car, it's really good handling here. Then you have a really lot of space on the interior and really flexible with the rear seats especially. You can also go for the 7 and 6 seat option. This also helps, for example, a big family then, and then you also have even more flexibility for this car. So altogether, I think it's a very promising car here, and I want to hear your comments on that one. Especially, I think the best part of the car is how it drives for being so big already. I think that's also the difference to the Volvo XC90. It doesn't drive that well as the Audi does, but I think the Volvo has some plus points with the design, especially for the exterior. So thank you again for watching Autogefühl. This was Thomas for you today again, and waiting forward to your comments on the exterior, interior, and also what I've told you about driving, because the engines were also very good altogether, and I think it doesn't matter so much if you go for the petrol and the diesel. And I hope now I'll see you also at the next Autogefühl episode.